There's a certain point where I think not prepping at all is just kind of lazy and irresponsible, unless you're just running a friends and family game and you just literally don't have time. But I will admit that I think my sessions were weaker when all I was doing was improvising my D&D games. Prepping gives you huge benefits for even if you like to improv, because when you prep and you actually prep some things, it sets you up to have much higher level, higher value sessions, and then you can improvise on top of that, right? If you're running pro games, you definitely should be prepping. Hello friends, GM Philosopher here. Welcome back to another episode of GM Philosophy. This is the channel where we empower game masters to run better games. I'm a full-time D&D Game Master and TTRPG content creator. I've been running games for over 14 years, and today we're going to talk about improvisation. I'm going to give you my up-to-date thoughts on improv during D&D. And because I've been doing a lot of improv lately, and I have fallen into a routine that I feel like is very good. I'm going to share this with you. Drop a comment and let me know what you do for improv, and let me know what you think is better, prep or improv. What do you think about that debate? We're going to talk about that in this video. I run 6 sessions a week at this point. I run 5 pro sessions and 1 friends and family game for my friends and family at home. I'm running all VTTs in my pro games, and my friends and family is at home, but I use my VTT setup and a tabletop monitor to project the VTT. So I actually am using VTT in all cases technically, okay? Now, let's talk first about the relationship between prep and improv, okay? There are a lot of GMs who spend a lot of time on prep, and so they may spend hours, for every session. I've heard a pretty average in our community of about an hour per session is what most GMs spend on prep. If you want to join our GM Philosophy community, by the way, on Discord, links in the description, make sure to join us. We're almost 700 Game Masters strong in there. But I've heard a lot of GMs say roughly they spend about an hour on prep per session, okay? Now, I've heard some GMs go way more than this. I've heard some GMs say that for every hour of play, you need to spend an hour of prep. I've heard some GMs say that they love to spend hours and hours and hours on prep, and they may or may not use all of it, and that's okay. It helps you improvise when the time comes. I've also heard of GMs saying they don't really prep much at all. They do all improvisation, okay? So we have a spectrum here. I spent a lot of time in the past being a complete improv GM. I think it helped me develop my improv skills, but I will admit that I think my sessions were weaker when all I was doing was improvising my D&D games. Prepping gives you huge benefits for even if you like to improv, because when you prep and you actually prep some things, it sets you up to have much higher level, higher value sessions, and then you can improvise on top of that, right? There's a certain point where I think not prepping at all is just kind of lazy and irresponsible, unless you're just running a friends and family game and you just literally don't have time to do it, right? And that's okay. If you're running pro games, you definitely should be prepping, definitely. Now, with that being said, let me tell you another thing. It is harder to improvise for VTTs because with a VTT, unless you're doing pure theater of the mind, improvising a battle map is much more difficult. Yes, you can draw it and things like that, but it's going to look kind of weird. Nowadays, people kind of expect to have nice, high quality maps. So prepping your maps in advance, or at least having maps you can choose from, is a pretty important part of the process. Also, tokens. Improvising tokens is actually not that difficult, but you do have to think that, like, what are you going to do if you improvise an NPC, but you don't have a token for them? Are you going to whip up an AI art real quick? Are you going to just grab a stock token and put it in there and then replace it next time? Are you going to hurriedly look for art online and then make a token out of it quick while your players are talking and planning? What are you going to do? So you have to think through these things. So another thing is that on my VTT, I always give like enemies and even NPCs like a health bar and their armor class, and I try to set up encounters like that, and it's fun. My players have enjoyed seeing like health bars of enemies and stuff like that, but that's all stuff that has to be set up. So if I don't prep that, I'm going to sit there for minutes doing all this stuff while they're waiting to take their combat turn, right? That's obviously not desirable. So here's my approach these days to improv versus prep, and drop a comment and let me know your process, okay? But here's what I do. First of all, I think about the encounter and what they're probably going to do in the next session. And then I make sure that during the week I prep the maps. If I don't prep anything else, maps is the very first thing. Prepping the map is kind of the most crucial part, okay? So that's something I definitely do. I design all my maps using ChatGPT. I put a quote in, like I put a prompt in, and I say, hey, develop me a top-down VTT map for my D&D game that's like an ocean beach with like a broken wagon on it. and then put a couple palm trees in there, make it nice and fantasy style. And that's how I generate the majority of my maps. There are very rare exceptions to this, but ChatGPT is getting so good at this that it's honestly working out very good. That's how I generate my maps, but it does take some time and tweaking to get it right. But usually the tweaking is just me suggesting ChatGPT, hey, will you change this? And it changes it. Honestly, I canceled my Incarnate subscription because I don't even need to use it anymore. If I really, really need to do something, like put something on the map after the fact, what I will do is I'll just create that little element, download it as a prop, and then put it out down the map as another layer on my VTT. And then I'll just delete it when I don't need it. I do this with like big stone doors and things like that people can like remove and things like that. So I prep that, okay? And then the next thing I prep are tokens of suspected enemies and NPCs, especially enemies though. So I start with enemies, and then I lay out the map on the VTT. I put the enemy tokens where they're going to be on the map, and I make them invisible. I give them a health bar, and I give them their AC, basically their stats, and then I generate their stat blocks. Nowadays, I do very simple enemy stat blocks. I just really keep it simple so that enemy turns are supposed to be fast, fast, fast. We're not doing a bunch of complex enemy things. We want Spotlight to be on the friendly PCs during combat. So those are the first two things I'll prep. And I prep those pretty much every time. I try to have those prepped, okay? Because those are the most labor-intensive things to prep, and they're the things that can hold up the session or really decrease the value of the session if they're not done right. Next, I'll do friendly NPCs they may meet. I'll generate a handful of NPCs that I think are cool sounding. The way I do tokens these days is I literally do it in ChatGPT. I'll be like, hey, make me a token of a guy who looks kind of like a sailor, and he has a parrot on his shoulder, and he's like holding a mug of rum. And he looks suspicious. Make me a token of that character. And it'll just generate me a nice token. I'll throw that into Token Maker to trim it, download it, upload it to my VTT, and then put it on my map, make it invisible, and boom, we're ready, right? So I'll do this with 4, 5, 6 NPCs. I'll have those tokens ready to go. So that's the majority of my prep. But where does improv come in? Improv comes in when I'm running the session and I have a plan for the session, but then I come up with an idea that's way better than what my plan was. So with that being said, what is an example? So in my Hag Spawn game, not so long ago, they were going to the Idol of the Deep Mother. And the idea was they had this scroll with a seal on it. They weren't supposed to open it, but they were supposed to take it to the Idol of the Deep Mother and trade it for this magical black crown with a red gem. So I set this up in the previous session. Basically, this was a quest they got from a wizard, okay? Now, I prepped this, but I specifically did not prep what was going to happen when they got to the idol, because I was waiting to prep that for the next time, because I knew I was going to want to let that marinate a bit before I make my final decisions on it. What I thought I was going to do is I thought I was going to have them go to the idol, and I thought they were going to present this, and I thought the idol was going to kind of speak to them and make some kind of like bargain and speak kind of deep monolithic things. They would have to make some kind of difficult choice. And if they succeeded at this diplomatic sort of encounter, then the idol of the Deep Mother would take the scroll and they would get the crown, and then they could take it back to the wizard, and they would deal with whatever consequences they got, in this exchange. But literally, as the session was ending and they arrived at the idol of the Deep Mother, I had a different idea. I was like, no, I want to make this like the scene in Aladdin where they go out to the desert and then the lion's mouth opens and there's this orange hallway leading down and they say only the chosen one can go down. I was like, I want to make this like that. So instead I changed it all. And when they reached the idol, I had the idol give them kind of a monolithic speech, and I had her belly like open up into this orange cavern leading down. And then that's where we ended the session. So we ended it on a cliffhanger. So now I had kind of changed the mental prep work I'd done about the deal, and I have to go back to the drawing board before the next session and prepare a bunch of stuff. So I prepare a bunch of stuff. I prepare some simple puzzles. I get a map ready, and I get some enemies. Like I had this idea for this one undead woman who if they opened a sarcophagus, she would come out and she would attack them, and she would be very dangerous, right? And then I also had the idea that there would be treasure in there, but the treasure would be cursed. And my idea of the curse was just that, like, it would be like a trap. If they open it, it'll like blow up or something and they'll take damage. Like, so I was kind of preparing this, and then I prepared a big dude they were going to have to fight at the end of the maze. Like, it was kind of like an underground Egyptian tomb type situation. They had to fight this big guy who kind of looks like a jackal, like an undead large sized jackal with a big like battle axe. And then when they defeated him, the crown would appear and they would get it because he was like guarding this crown. It was like a tomb. This was my original plan. Okay. But then we start the session. And as they go down into the session and they start, the first thing they did was they open up a secret room and they find the sarcophagus with that woman in it. And they find the gold box as a treasure. So they ignore the sarcophagus and they start just grabbing the treasure. And then I immediately have inspiration. I was like, no, I don't want this to be a trap. See, now I'm starting to improvise. I prepped traps, but now I wanted to do something different. I was like, no. I want to do something different. I want to do something a little more like interesting. So this came off the top of my head when they pick up the treasure box, or first they open it. They can open it just fine, no problem. They see gold and gems, right? And they're like, oh my God, yes, so much gold, so many gems. There's these little like strong boxes at the bottom of each sarcophagus. The first player picks it up and tries to dump the treasure into their bag of holding. But then I describe when you dump the treasure into the bag of holding, suddenly it begins to turn into sand. The gems and the gold just turns into sand, and you see this ethereal orangish magic come sprouting up, and then it forms into a spectral viper, a cobra, and it rolls to attack, right? Now, at this point, I was completely improvising. I just knew I didn't want to do traps. Traps was boring. I was sick of it. I was like, no. I'm changing my mind right now. I'm going to do this magical cobra thing. So and then I'm going to have the treasure turn into sand. I want it to be deeper. I want something different. Now the cobra attacks. It's like, what's going to happen? I don't know. I'm improvising. I don't have an image of the cobra because I didn't prep it. So we're theater of the minding this. I'm just like, you see this, I'm describing it. However, while I'm describing it, I'm over here, click, and off the screen, making an AI image of the spectral cobra and turning it into a token. But not yet. In this scene, it's just theater of the mind, but it's going to come back around and watch. So the cobra tries to attack. It misses. The player character says, I'm going to bite it back. So it's like, interesting. Okay, they bite. I think to myself, okay, it's going to take three incidences of doing damage for this cobra to be dissipated, but it gets an attack each turn. It tries to bite her again, misses. The other two players fire their like crossbows at it, hit it, they kill it. It's like, okay, you've avoided the trap. Like, this didn't work. But next time, character, or actually it was an NPC, one of the characters ordered their mount, who's like a giant ant with pinchers. Don't ask. But they ordered their mount to pick up the treasure and to carry it over to their bag of holding. The mount picks it up. It all dissolves into sand. Cobra comes out and instantly bites the mount. When it bites it, I'm thinking, what happens? What happens? I want there to be a curse, but I want it to be something that they have to solve. Like it follows them along. So here's what happens. I have it slither spectrally into the ant. And now then it disappears. But now every once in a while, I roll a d4 and the ant takes that much fire damage. They're like, what's going on? They're like trying all these things. They like heal it. It's still in there because it's like a curse, but it's like a spectral viper living in the creature. So this goes on. And I just improv all this right here because I was like, in the moment, I was like, traps don't sound fun to me. I don't want to do normal traps. I want to do something more interesting. So I improvised the spectral cobra, which is the direction I was going. And see, I prepped the sarcophagus, I prepped the boxes, I prepped the map, but the cobra thing was improvised on top of all that because I just thought it sounded better. See, when my plans change, I think, oh, I have a better idea than I prepped for, I will change. That's when the improv comes in, right? Another thing that happened is that the sarcophagus lid started to slide off and they all tried to like hold it down, but then they were like, okay, we're not going to be able to hold the sarcophagus lid down. And there's like, let's all step back and prepare to fire and we'll just blast whatever comes up, right? But then I thought to myself, this is boring. I don't want her to come up and just attack them and it'd be like a typical zombie attack. I want this to be different. So what I had was the lid comes off and this was all improv right on the spot. She sits up and she just like looks over at them. She's like a spectral undead zombie with like a headdress. Oh, not spectral. She's just an undead like zombie, like a mummy actually. She's technically a mummy. She got wraps on her and everything. And she looks around and then they're like, well, what's going on? What's going on? And then I have her stand up and she just kind of like steps out of the sarcophagus and very, very calmly walks to the nearest player character. So they're like on their toes. They're like, should we shoot her? Should we not? But she's going to walk up and she goes, ah, and she points at one of the characters is wearing a magic ring and she points at it and she just like, So she's not being aggressive. She's not being violent. She's not attacking them. She just points at the ring. Now, at this point, I'm thinking to myself, like, I was improvising this, like, but when she got up and started stepping out of her sarcophagus, I still didn't know what I was going to do. I just knew I didn't want her to just attack them and be a zombie. So what should we do? I'm thinking. She walks toward them. And then I just think magic items. She wants magic items. I don't know why yet, but I think that. She points at his magic ring. Why does she want the ring? I don't know, but I'm going to let them stew on it for a minute. They like talking, they're like, should we shoot her? Should we not? Should we let her go? She's not acting aggressive. Then the character's like, maybe we'll see. I'm going to take off this ring and I'm going to hand it to her, right? So then what happens is I just think to myself, I want this to be like a you come for information thing, almost like Speak with the Dead, but she needs magic items to do it. So she takes it, pops it in her mouth. You see her jaw just unhinge and kind of chew, and you hear her grinding up the magic ring, and then she swallows it, and the little magical essence comes up, and then her eyes turn from opaque blue to red, and she says, state your request. And then they're like, what is going on? And my thinking now is, okay, they can ask her anything they want about this lair. She like knows everything about it. She knows what's going on. They don't know this. They have no clues or context. But that's the thing. If they ask her anything about this layer, she can tell them. For example, she can tell them where secret doors are. She can tell them how to unlock it. She can tell them how to solve puzzles. But it requires a magic item every time she's going to answer the question. And then, so he gave her the magic item. And then he said, they were like talking, and I was waiting for him to ask a question. Then he finally asks a question. As they're all deliberating, he says, man, what is life? Like he says, what is life in game, kind of joking around with them, right, in the middle of this. But then I have her go, what is life? Life is a cycle wherein you are born into a world and imbued with consciousness. And then he's like, whoa, that wasn't my question. But I have her answer the question. And then her eyes go back to being blue and she stands there. And now she points at his next magic item. And then he realizes, oh my gosh, like she gives answers. So it's like, it's costing them something, right? So anyway, and then the whole encounter, she was following them around and just pointing at their magic items. She never attacked them or anything. And this was kind of a funny thing. So whenever they would run up against something they didn't understand, they would feed her. They'd be like, what's our least valuable magic item? And they would give it to her. And then she would like give them the answer. Like they got through a secret door this way one time. One time they actually figured out what the big puzzle was, like what was going on here. And that's another thing. As they were going in here, I thought to myself, the minute they started going down the stairs, so you remember what I had originally said was, I think that this is going to be like a thing where the undead are protecting the crown. But then as soon as they were going down, I was like, no, I want this to be about a genie. I really want this to be about a genie because I had Aladdin in my mind. And I was like, I want it to be an Afridi princess, but she's evil. And the crown is her vessel and the material plane. And she's attached to it. But she needs a mortal to take it around with her. And I was just thinking about this on the fly. And then I started kind of leading the lore into that direction. I started putting like Afridi clues, like these undead were speaking primordial, like Auran, so they were speaking the language of the fire elementals. So I started just leading things down into this direction. And then while the whole encounter was going, I was quickly generating art and lore and magic items that were all Afridi themed. Right. And they had the Afridi lore. And I was doing this while they were going through the session. I had a minute of downtime. I'd be generating this, so that I could give them nice magic item images and stuff when they found them, like the crown. I created the crown. See, I did all this because when they started the encounter, I got a better idea than I'd prepped for. My prep helped me to set up for that, but then I improved it and I managed to get away with it. And if I ran out of time on something, I would just theater of the mind it until I got the visuals, and then I'd give them the visuals. That's how I balance prep and improv these days. Drop a comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree or disagree. Let me know if you think my method sucks or if it's good. Thank you all for coming back to another episode of GM Philosophy. Empowering Game Masters run better games is the goal. Roll some D100s for me at your next game, friends, and I'll see you on the next one.